The doorbell rang at 8:01 the night before. I opened the door, and it was Tommy, covered in snow, crying like a lost child. "Grandma," he said between sobs. "Daddy said, you're going to die." I knew right then and there that something was very wrong. I just didn't know that my own son was already slowly killing me. My name is Eleanor Mitchell. I'm 72 years old, and I've lived here in Lincoln Park, Chicago, for over 40 years. I've always been one of those women who wakes up early, makes strong coffee, and can't sit still. My late husband, Robert, used to joke, "Eleanor, you have a Duracell battery for a heart." This Christmas Eve was no different. 5 in the morning, hot coffee, apron tied around my waist, and hands on deck. Literally. I was making the apple pie Michael has been crazy about since he was little. I remember him at 7, climbing up on a chair to lick the bowl, his face all covered in sugar. "Make it like Grandma Ruth used to make, right, Mom?" Of course, my son. Always. The living room table had been set early. My mother's tablecloth, the Irish lace one she brought from Kansas when she came to live here in Chicago. 20 seats. I counted again, just to be sure. Michael, Jessica, the 4 grandchildren, my sister Dorothy with her group, some dear neighbors. A full house, just the way I always wanted. "You're overreacting again, Eleanor," I said to myself, but I was too happy to care. You can overreact at Christmas, right? It's love turning into food. The 15-kilo turkey barely fit in the oven. It would have fed an army, but I always made it that way. Too much is better than too little. The 7-foot tree dominated the living room, each ornament in its place. The little stars Tommy made at school last year right at the front, the little red balls Jessica brought when she got married, and the slightly crooked little angel Michael made as a child, ugly as hell, but made with so much love. 2 in the afternoon, and I was still running around. Star-shaped cookies for Emma's snack, Jessica's cheesecake freezing, Dorothy's tiramisu. Everyone had their own special dish, you know how it is. The house was spotless. Everything was spotless. The smell of cinnamon was in the air, and there was a fire in the fireplace. Family photos beamed at me from every corner. Generations of Mitchells gathered there on the wall. 5:30, quick shower, navy blue dress. Michael always says it looks beautiful on me. A little lipstick. I wanted to look pretty to welcome everyone. 6 o'clock sharp. Nobody. Must be traffic, I thought, warming up the snacks again. Chicago at Christmas is a driving hell. 6:30, the turkey is starting to dry out. 7 o'clock. I called Michael. "The number you dialed is out of range." Jessica, same thing. Dorothy, nothing. 8 o'clock at night. I sat at the set table, looking at those 20 empty chairs, the candles dripping wax onto Mom's tablecloth, the fire already turning to ash, and there I was, like a bundle, crying in my perfect kitchen. That's when the doorbell rang. I ran like crazy, finally. But when I opened the door, it wasn't the whole gang with excuses and late presents. It was just Tommy, my 8-year-old grandson, drenched in snow, without a proper coat, with that little face of someone who'd cried his eyes out. "Grandma," he managed to say, shivering from cold and fear. "Tommy, my love." My heart skipped a beat when I saw that familiar face. I quickly pulled him inside before he turned into a popsicle on my porch. "What are you doing here alone, honey? Where's your dad, your mom?" But as soon as I closed the door and turned on the hall light, I saw something was very wrong. The boy was shivering, and it wasn't just from the cold. His little blue eyes, just like Michael's when he was little, were red from crying. His nose was running, and his clothes were soaked from the snow. "Come here, my angel. Let Grandma warm you up." I took off his soaked jacket and grabbed a towel. "How did you get here? Did you come by bus? Does your father know you left?" Tommy shook his head no, but he couldn't speak properly. He sobbed like he did when he was a baby and woke up from nightmares. My grandmother instincts went off like an ambulance siren. "Calm down, love, breathe slowly." I sat on the couch and pulled him onto my lap. Even at 8 years old, he still fit perfectly there. "Tell Grandma what happened." "Did you run away from home?" I didn't run away, no, he managed to say between sobs. I took an Uber. By Uber? I almost fell over. Tommy, what do you mean? Who called the Uber? Do you have a cell phone? He reached into the pocket of his wet jeans and pulled out a small iPhone. One of those kids' ones, covered in colorful protective cases. Mom gave it to me this year because I started going to my friends' houses alone sometimes. She taught me how to use the Uber app. His voice was a little muffled because his face was pressed against my chest. I said I was going to my school friend's house, but I came here. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. An 8-year-old kid taking an Uber alone in Chicago on Christmas Eve, and his parents didn't even know where he was. Honey, your parents must be worried. I started to speak, but he interrupted me. Not at all, Grandma. They didn't even notice I was gone. Now he was crying again, harder. Daddy was in the office going through some papers. Mommy was in the bedroom, talking on the phone. They didn't even talk to me properly today. My heart sank. What the hell was going on in that family? And why did you want to come here, honey? Not that I'm not happy, but I pulled him away a little to look him in the eyes. You look really sad. What's wrong? His little face contorted in a way that reminded me so much of little Michael when he had a problem at school and didn't know how to tell him. Grandma, he whispered, looking down at his feet. Can I stay here with you tonight? Of course you can, my love. But first, I'm going to call your parents to let them know where you are, okay? No! His scream startled me. I'd never seen Tommy like this, desperate like that. Please, Grandma. Don't call them yet. I need to tell you something first. The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. I sat him down next to me on the couch and held his cold little hands. What's up, honey? Go ahead and tell me. Grandma's here. He swallowed hard, wiped his nose on his sleeve, and looked at me with those eyes of someone carrying a secret too heavy for a child. Grandma, Dad said something about you today. Something really bad. His voice was almost a whisper. And I think he's lying. But what if he's not? What if it's true? My mouth instantly went dry. What's up, Tommy? He took a deep breath, as if preparing to jump off a cliff. Daddy said you're very sick, that you're going to die soon. The tears flowed again. He said that's why we couldn't come here today, that it would be very sad for us to see you like this. The world stopped. I, who'd never been healthier in my life. I, who'd just spent the entire day cooking like crazy, cleaning the house, decorating the tree. I, who barely had a headache, dying. Tommy. My voice came out a little hoarse. Who else heard your father say that? Everyone. He sniffed. Mommy, Aunt Dorothy on the phone, even the neighbors. He said you're in terminal condition, terminal state. The words echoed in my head like a funeral bell. Michael, my own son, was telling everyone that I was dying. But why? I stared at Tommy, unblinking. His words echoed in my head. Terminal. Will die soon. It felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Tommy, honey. My voice was shaky. Are you sure that's what your dad said? He nodded, wiping his nose on his sleeve. He said it exactly like this. Grandma Eleanor is very sick, Tommy. She has a serious illness and she's not going to get better. And then he whispered into the phone that you were terminally ill. The boy repeated the words like a parrot, not understanding their weight. What's terminally ill, Grandma? Oh my God. How could I explain to an 8-year-old that this meant I was going to die? And worse, how could I explain that it was all a lie? Yeah, it's when someone's really, really sick, honey. I swallowed. My hands were shaking. But Tommy, look at Grandma. Do I look sick to you? He looked me up and down, frowning. No, you look the same as always, even prettier today, in that blue dress. He touched my hand. That's why I thought it was strange, and that's why I came to see you. I wanted to be sure. Tears began to stream down my face, not from sadness, but from anger, a rage I had never felt in my life. Tommy, did your dad say anything else? About medicine, doctors, anything like that? Oh, yes. His eyes lit up, as if he'd remembered something important. He said you have a nurse taking care of you here at home. That's why no one can come visit you. A nurse? I looked around my empty room. What nurse? I don't know. He said it was dangerous for us to come here because it could make your illness worse, that you need to stay quiet, without visitors, without noise. Tommy paused. But I thought, if Grandma is really going to die, I want to give her a hug first. There, I collapsed. I cried like a baby, hugging my grandson on the living room sofa. He, poor thing, didn't understand a thing. He just kept stroking my hair. Don't cry, Grandma. You're not going to die, are you? You're very strong. Between one sob and the next, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place in my head. That's why no one had called to ask how I was. That's why no neighbors had come over with soup or a hug. That's why Dorothy hadn't insisted on coming to see me. Everyone thought I was on my deathbed, under medical care, unable to receive visitors. Michael had created the perfect lie. He completely isolated me from everyone. And worst of all, he had used my own illness as an excuse. Tommy, did your father say when this illness started? How long has it been? About 2 weeks, I think. He scratched his head, trying to remember. It was after that day he got really nervous going through some papers in the office. Mom was asking about money, and they had a little fight. 2 weeks, right when I'd signed those documents Michael brought. He said it was just an update to my will, a lawyer thing. Just a formality, Mom. For your safety. What an idiot I was. And everyone believed it, I asked, more to myself than to Tommy. Everyone was so sad. Aunt Dorothy cried on the phone. Mom, too. Even the neighbors down the street said they'd pray for you. He looked at me with those innocent eyes. But I didn't understand why no one came to visit you. When Grandpa Robert was sick, the house was always full of people. Exactly. When Robert had cancer, our house felt like a train station. Friends, relatives, neighbors. Everyone wanted to help, bring food, keep us company. Now I understood the silence. Michael had convinced everyone that visitors were harmful to my health, that I needed complete isolation. Grandma, why are you crying again? Tommy wiped a tear from my face with his small hand. Because Grandma found out someone told a really big lie about her, my love. A lie? So you won't die? No, honey. I'll live for many, many years to come. I held his little face between my hands. But now Grandma needs to find out why your daddy made up this story. Although, deep down, I was already starting to get suspicious. Those papers I signed. The money talk Tommy overheard. The strange calls Michael had been making. My own son wasn't just spreading the word that I was going to die. He was killing me on paper to get my inheritance. I went to my office, the little corner where I kept all my important papers. I opened the drawer where my financial documents were kept. My heart raced. Where is the deed to the vacation home in Lake Geneva? I went through everything. Contracts, certificates, insurance policies. The deed to the lake house was nowhere to be found. I always kept everything neatly, every document in its place. I never lost a thing. Calm down, Eleanor. Maybe you put it somewhere else, I murmured, but I could already feel butterflies in my stomach. I checked them one by one. The deed to this house, here. The car documents, here. Robert's birth certificate, marriage certificate, and death certificate. Everything was in place. All that was missing was the lake house. I sat in my office chair, trying to remember. When was the last time I saw this document? Oh, yes. 2 weeks ago, when Michael came with that lawyer. Doctor something. Silverman. Silvera. I couldn't quite remember. It's just an update to the will, Mom. Standard procedure, Michael had said. You need to see some documents to verify the assets. Idiot. How could I be so stupid? I picked up the phone and called my bank. After midnight, of course, only the automatic recording was available, but I wrote down the number to call first thing in the morning. I needed to know if anyone had tampered with my accounts. I went back to the living room, looked at Tommy sleeping like an angel, and started thinking about the last few months. Michael's strange behaviors that I had ignored. Visits became more rare. Before, he'd come every weekend, bringing the kids for lunch. For about 3 months now, he'd only come when I called insistently, and always in a hurry, always a little busy. The questions about money started out subtle. "Mom, have you been thinking about making a better retirement plan? Wouldn't it be nice to invest in a smaller, easier-to-maintain house? Have you updated your will recently?" And I, silly, thought it was the concern of a loving son. I remembered the phone calls. Last month I called him 3 times and he didn't answer. When he called back, he always apologized. "Sorry, Mom, I was in an important meeting." The phone was on silent. "I didn't realize you called." Jessica also felt strange. Before, she would call at least once a week to talk, to tell me about the kids. Now, when I called, she would be a little awkward, in a hurry to hang up. "Oh, Eleanor, it's so good to hear from you. How are you? Oh, sorry, I have to go get the kids." And the grandchildren. When was the last time I saw Emma, Lucas, and Sophie? Only Tommy still came to visit me from time to time, but always in secret, like today. I grabbed my phone and started scrolling through the messages. The last one from Michael was from a week ago. "Mom, I'm going to be a bit absent this week. I'm busy. Call me if there's an emergency." Emergency. What an interesting word to use with your mother. I went to the kitchen, made some chamomile tea to calm my nerves, and sat at the table where I'd prepared that Christmas dinner no one came to eat. The candles had already completely burned out. I grabbed a pen and paper. I've always made lists when I was nervous. It helps organize my thoughts. I stopped writing and looked at the list. My God, how had I not noticed it before? It was so obvious. Michael was slowly isolating me. First, by reducing visits. Then, by making excuses for family not to come. Now, by inventing that I was dying so no one would have contact with me anymore. And while I was here alone, thinking it was a coincidence, he was doing what exactly with my possessions? I remembered something else. Last week, Mrs. Margaret, my 40-year-old neighbor, had commented at the market, "Eleanor, I heard you're not in the best of health. If you need anything." At the time, I didn't pay attention. I thought she was talking about my age, about the normal aches and pains of a 72-year-old. Now I understood. Michael had been spreading the story about his illness for longer than I'd realized. I picked up the phone again and called my lawyer's office, Dr. Henrique Mora. It was obviously going to go to answering machine, but I left a message. "Dr. Henrique, this is Eleanor Mitchell. Please call me as soon as possible. It's urgent. I need to know if anyone has contacted you about my documents or will, and I want a copy of everything I have on file in your office. Thank you." I hung up the phone and looked at the clock, 1:15 in the morning. Tommy shifted on the couch, mumbling something in his sleep. I walked over to him and straightened the blanket I'd draped over him. That boy had saved my life by coming here today. If it weren't for him, I never would have found out. I went back to the kitchen, grabbed my old laptop, and turned it on. I wasn't very good with computers, but I knew the basics. I went to the bank's website, but I needed to go in person to get full access to my account. I Googled how to tell if someone is selling your property without authorization. The results sent chills down my spine. Several articles about family scams, document forgery, and fraudulent powers of attorney. That's exactly what was happening to me. Michael wasn't just making up that I was going to die. He was killing me on paper so he could sell everything before I found out. But now I knew, and I was going to find out how far this lie went. Tomorrow, I would go after every document, every bill, every property. I would call everyone Michael told me I was sick. I would prove I was alive and healthy, and then I was going to have a very serious talk with my son. It was almost 9 o'clock when I gently rocked Tommy awake. "Honey, wake up. Grandma needs to talk to you." He opened his confused little eyes, still sleepy. "Is it morning already, Grandma?" "No, honey. Listen here." I sat down next to him on the couch. "You need to go home now, but don't tell your parents you came here, okay?" "Why?" He sat up, smarter. I don't want to leave. I know, my love, but it's important. Your parents can't find out you came here. I held his little hands. When you get home, you tell them you went to your friend's house and came back. That everything went well. But I was only here for 40 minutes. He looked at the TV clock. I didn't even have time to play properly. Exactly. Not long. Your parents probably didn't even notice you left. I took his phone. And now listen carefully. You're going to send a message to my phone, but without signing your name. Just write something like, I'm home, everything's fine, okay? Tommy frowned. This is a bit strange, Grandma. Why such a secret? How do you explain to a child that his father is a criminal? That the whole family is being deceived? It's just that Grandma found out there's a huge mess going on. And until I resolve it, it's better that no one knows we talked today, okay? He shook his head, still a little confused, but obedient. He called another Uber. Jesus. What kind of world is this where a child calls a car alone? And before leaving, he gave me a tight hug. Grandma, do you promise you won't die? I promise, my love. Grandma will live a long time. 20 minutes later, I received a message on my cell phone. I'm home. Everything's fine. I managed to sleep for about 3 hours. On Christmas Day, I woke up with puffy eyes and a broken heart. The house that should have been filled with laughter and hugs was deathly silent. I spent the whole day crying. I cried while making coffee alone. I cried looking at the presents under the tree that no one would open. I cried while eating microwave turkey. I called Dorothy 3 times. Each time, it went to voicemail. Had Michael made up some story for her, too? The existential crisis hit hard that afternoon. Sitting in Robert's armchair, looking at the family photos on the wall, I asked myself, what kind of mother was I to raise a son capable of doing this to me? Where did I go wrong? I slept on the living room sofa, hugging a pillow, watching Christmas movie reruns on TV. But on Monday, 7:30 in the morning, I took a shower, got ready, and went straight to the bank. First National is 10 minutes from home. I arrived when it opened. Good morning, Mrs. Eleanor. Patricia, my manager for 15 years, greeted me with her usual smile. How was Christmas? You look so... Patricia, I need an urgent favor. I got straight to the point. I want to see all my account transactions from the last 3 months. Everything. And I need to know if anyone else has access to my accounts. Her smile faded. Did something happen? That's what I am trying to figure out. She took me to a private room and started fiddling with the computer. After about 5 minutes, her expression completely changed. Ms. Eleanor, did you authorize a transfer of $280,000 on December 18th? My stomach dropped. What transfer? It shows here that it was for your son, Michael Mitchell. A wire transfer. She turned the screen to me. And look, on the 15th, $340,000 came into your account. Where did this money come from? Patricia clicked on more details. From the sale of a property. According to the records here, it was the summer house in Lake Geneva. The world spun. What do you mean? I didn't sell any houses. But everything is fine here, Mrs. Eleanor. There's even a digital signature on the deed. She stopped talking when she saw my look of despair. You didn't know that? Patricia, someone forged my signature. Someone sold my property without my knowledge. Oh my God. She typed faster. Let me see who brokered the sale. There was silence for a few minutes, just the sound of the keyboard echoing in the small room. Here, I found it. The sale was brokered by Silverman and Associates. And the person who signed as your attorney, in fact, was Michael Mitchell. Attorney. He had forged a power of attorney. Patricia, I want a copy of everything, absolutely everything, and I want to block any movement that isn't done personally by me. Of course, Mrs. Eleanor. But I'll have to report this to the authorities if there really was forgery. Communicate. Communicate everything. While she was arranging the documents, I stared at the numbers on the screen. Michael had sold my lake house for $340,000 and within 3 days had transferred $280,000 into his account. He left only $60,000 in my account. Miss Eleanor, there's something else strange here. Patricia returned with a stack of papers. Your son was here last week asking about your retirement plan and investments. He said you were very sick and he wanted to organize your finances to make things easier. And you gave him information? We didn't give details, but we confirmed that you had a good amount of accumulated wealth. He said that when the time came, he wanted everything to be in order so as not to cause any headaches for the family. When the time came, he was already planning my death. Patricia, I want you to give me the address of this Silverman and Associates office, and I want to know if my son has made any further inquiries about my accounts. She checked the system. He called 3 times in the last month, asking about international transfers. He said you might want to invest in some funds abroad. International transfers. The scoundrel was thinking of sending my money out of the country. I left the bank with a briefcase full of documents and my heart pounding. I got in my car and called Dr. Enrique. Doctor, this is Eleanor Mitchell. Did you get my message? Yes, I did, Mrs. Eleanor. I was just worried. Yesterday we received a call from your son saying that you were hospitalized in serious condition and that he urgently needed copies of your will. And you gave it? Of course not. We never release documents without the client's express authorization, but he insisted a lot, saying it was an emergency. Doctor, I need to see you today. My son is trying to forge my documents. Come now. I'll cancel my morning appointments. On the way to the lawyer's office, I stopped at a light and looked at the bank papers again. $280,000. Almost all the money from the sale of my vacation home. Michael wasn't just spreading the word that I was going to die. He was literally stealing my inheritance while I was still alive, and if Tommy hadn't come to tell me, I never would have found out. I would still think my family abandoned me out of laziness or forgetfulness, while my own son emptied my bank account. The burning question. What else had he sold? What else was I still going to discover? Dr. Henrique's office was in downtown Chicago, in an old brick building that always reminded me of lawyer movies. I arrived at 10:30 a.m., still shaking with anger and disbelief. Ms. Eleanor, please sit down. Dr. Henrique, a 65-year-old gentleman who had handled my legal affairs for over 20 years, was visibly concerned. Tell me exactly what's going on. I spilled everything. The lie about my terminal illness, the fraudulent sale of the lake house, the wire transfers, everything. He listened, nodding, taking notes. Miss Eleanor, this is fraud and document forgery. We'll have to report it to the police immediately. He stopped writing and looked at me compassionately. But allow me a personal question. Has your son ever shown signs of financial trouble before? I sighed deeply. It was time to admit what I had been denying for years. Dr. Michael has always been complicated with money. I started counting. The first troubles 15 years ago, when he lost $15,000 playing poker and came to me asking for a loan. It's just bad luck, Mom. A bad streak. He never paid me back. Then Jessica arrived, pregnant with Emma, crying in my kitchen because he was gambling online and had lost $25,000 in 6 months. I paid the mortgage on their house so they wouldn't lose everything. How many times have you helped financially, Doctor? Henrique asked, seeing my tired expression. I lost count. There was always a new excuse, an emergency, a promise that this time it would be different. I ran my hand through my hair. That story about the investment with my college friend, $50,000 that vanished into thin air because the company never existed. The children's education fund he lost at an online casino. The lawyer shook his head. Gambling addiction is a serious illness, Miss Eleanor. I know. I even paid for private treatment for him. 3 months at a clinic in Colorado, plus $20,000. I laughed awkwardly. He didn't have any problems for 2 years. I thought he was cured. And in total, how much do you estimate you spent on it? Over $150,000 over the years. The confession stung. I always thought it was a mother's love, that I had to help because he was sick. Dr. Henrique leaned across the table. Ms. Eleanor, gambling addicts often turn to loan sharking when legal avenues are exhausted. Your son may be in debt to dangerous people. The penny dropped. That's why the desperation. That's why this madness of faking my death. Exactly. When an addict is cornered, they're capable of anything. He picked up a pen. Let's do this. First, we'll go to the police station and file a report. Then, I need to contact this firm, Silverman and Associates, to find out how they managed to forge your documents. As he made calls, I kept thinking about the conversation Jessica had had with me about 6 months ago. I hadn't given it much thought at the time, but now it made sense. Eleanor, Michael has been very stressed at work. Sometimes I worry about him. She said he was staying late at the office, nervous, and getting strange calls. He says it's just pressure from his boss, but strange calls. Probably debt collectors. Or worse. Ms. Eleanor, Dr. Enrique hung up the phone. I've got some interesting information. The Silverman and Associates office doesn't exist. It's a fake address. Like this? I called the Bar Association. There is no lawyer registered with that name. Whoever brokered the sale of your house was a fraud. The hole was deeper than I imagined. Michael had not only forged my signature, he had created a fake law firm to lend credibility to the scam. Doctor, does this mean other people might be getting scammed too? Probably. We'll have to report this to the FBI as well. Falsifying federal documents is a federal crime. FBI. My son was going to end up under federal investigation. I looked at my watch. 11:45. In a few hours, I'd be at the police station reporting my own son. At 72 years old, I'd discover I'd raised a criminal. Doctor, where did I go wrong? As a mother, where did I fail? He looked at me fondly. Mrs. Eleanor, you didn't fail. You loved. Sometimes loving too much can be dangerous, but it's not a character flaw. Loving too much. Maybe that's what it was. I always wanted to protect Michael, solve his problems, give him another chance. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being a mother and became an accomplice. Now it was too late for education. Now it was time for justice. Come on, doctor. Let's get this over with. I grabbed my bag and got up from my chair. It was time to face the truth. My son was no longer the boy I'd raised. He was a 50-year-old man who had chosen crime as a solution to his own problems. And I was no longer going to be an accomplice to that. After visiting Dr. Henrique and filing a police report, I made a decision that surprised even myself. I was going to wait until New Year's. Ms. Eleanor, why not confront him now? The police investigator didn't understand my strategy. Because I want to catch him off guard. I want to see his face when he finds out I know everything. I also needed time to process all of this. Besides, didn't you say you need more evidence to arrest him? For a whole week, I pretended nothing had happened. I didn't call Michael. I didn't text him. Nothing. December 31st, 7:30 p.m. I got dressed up meticulously. Red dress, lipstick, perfume. I wanted to look impeccable for what was about to happen. I got in my car and drove to Michael's house in Evanston. The streets were full of people getting ready for the New Year's Eve party, but I had my own party to attend. When I arrived in front of the house, I saw several cars in the driveway. Dorothy's car, my brother-in-law Frank's, even the Martins' neighbors. A family reunion. Perfect, I murmured. Everyone together. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Jessica opened the door. When she saw me standing there, smiling, visibly healthy and well-groomed, she turned white as a sheet. Eleanor, what? How? Did you? Hi, Jessica. Can I come in? I heard there's a New Year's party here. She stood frozen in the doorway, unsure of what to do. From inside the house came excited voices and laughter. It was clearly a family gathering. Eleanor, you shouldn't, Jessica stammered. Michael said you were... Was I doing, my daughter? Just then, Dorothy appeared behind Jessica. Eleanor! she screamed, covering her mouth with her hands. "Oh my God, are you okay?" "Hi, little sister. Of course I'm fine. Why wouldn't I be?" The noise of the party suddenly stopped. I heard running footsteps, and Michael appeared in the doorway. When he saw me standing there, smiling, healthy, he went pale. "Mom." "What? How did you get here?" "By car, son. Same as always." I walked past them both and into the house. Wow, what a beautiful party. Why didn't anyone invite me? The room was full of people. Dorothy and her husband, Frank and his wife, the neighbors Martins, even some of Michael's friends. Everyone was looking at me as if they'd seen a ghost. "Eleanor." Frank stood up from the couch, confused. "But you weren't—" "Michael said you were in the hospital." "In the hospital?" I laughed out loud. "What hospital, Frank? I'm here, alive and well as ever." Dorothy ran to hug me, crying. "Sister, what a scare. Michael said you were very sick, that you only had a few days to live." "A few days to live?" I looked straight at Michael, who was trembling against the wall. "What an interesting story." "Michael, don't you want to tell everyone what this story is?" Absolute silence in the room. Everyone looked from me to Michael, trying to understand. "Mom, please let me explain later," Michael whispered. "No, son, let's explain it now, in front of everyone." I sat down in the main chair in the living room. "Guys, do you know why Michael said I was dying?" "Eleanor, aren't you sick?" Mrs. Martins asked, confused. "I'm not sick at all. My son made up this story so you wouldn't come looking for me." I looked around the room. "And you know why? Because he sold my vacation home without my knowledge and stole almost $300,000 from my account." The silence was deafening. Dorothy let out a muffled scream. Frank's mouth fell open. "Eleanor, that can't be true." Dorothy looked at her nephew. "Michael, tell me that's not true." Michael was sweating coldly. "Auntie, let me explain." "Yes, explain, son." I leaned forward. "Tell everyone how you forged my signature, how you created a fake law firm, how you murdered me on paper to get my inheritance." Jessica started crying. "Michael, what's this? You stole your own mother." "It wasn't theft. It was borrowed." Michael broke down. "I was going to give it all back." "Alone?" Dorothy stood up, furious. You borrow, you don't steal." Frank shook his head. "Michael, how could you do this? You don't understand." Michael was desperate. "I owe $400,000. They were going to kill me, literally kill me." "Who was going to kill you?" Dorothy asked. "The loan sharks. I gambled too much, lost everything, borrowed money at exorbitant interest rates." He collapsed on the couch, crying. "Deus, if I didn't pay them back by January, they said they'd break my legs." Mrs. Martin stood up, indignant. "We've been praying for you for weeks, Eleanor. We lit candles in the church. And I set up a prayer chain at work." Frank was red with anger. "Michael, you made us pray for a lie." Dorothy came to sit beside me. "Sister, forgive us. We should have come to see you, sick or not." "No, Dorothy, it's not your fault." I took her hand. "Michael made up a story about me having a nurse at home and that visitors could make my condition worse. You believed it because you trusted him." "And how did you find out everything?" Jessica asked through tears. "Tommy. My grandson ran away from home on Christmas Eve to see me before I died. He was the one who told me the whole story." All heads turned to Michael. The look of disapproval was universal. "Michael." Frank stood up. "You used your own mother. You made the whole family suffer, and you put that child in the middle of it." "Dad!" Tommy came running out of the kitchen where he was playing with his cousins. "Grandma, I'm so glad you're here. You're not dead." The boy ran into my arms. His innocence contrasted with the guilt on his father's face. "I didn't die, my love, and I won't die any time soon." Michael looked at his son, who was hugging me, and completely broke down. "Mom, for the love of God, forgive me. I didn't know what else to do." "Michael," I stood up, still holding Tommy, "you're 50 years old. 50. When are you going to stop crying in Mommy's lap when you mess up? Dorothy shook her head. Eleanor, what are you going to do? I looked around the room, the whole family there, discovering they'd been deceived for weeks. Jessica crying, the children confused, Michael devastated. Aha! What am I going to do? I took a deep breath. I already did. I went to the police, I filed a complaint for fraud, document forgery, and bank fraud. A collective scream echoed through the room. Mom, no. Michael fell to his knees. Please drop the charges. They'll kill me if I get arrested. I looked at this 50-year-old man, on his knees in the room full of family and friends, begging like a child. My son. The boy I raised. What had he become? Michael, get up. Stop this humiliation. He stood up, wiping his face. Son, how many times did you promise me you would stop gambling? Several, but this time, how many times have I helped you financially? Over $150,000 over the years, Dorothy gasped. $150,000. And this time, instead of asking for help, you decided to rob me. My voice was firm, but my heart was breaking. Michael, I didn't raise a thief. I raised a son, but you chose to be a criminal. Jessica approached. Eleanor, what now? What will happen to the children? I looked at the grandchildren who had appeared in the room, confused by all the commotion. The children aren't to blame, Jessica. You'll always have my support. I looked back at Michael. But he'll have to face the consequences of his own actions. Michael looked at me desperately. Mom? Michael, enough. It's over. My voice was firm. You're a grown man. It's time to act like one. Michael knelt down again, this time grabbing my leg like he used to do when he was a kid, and he was up to no good. Mom, please, drop the charges. I beg you. Tears streamed down his face. If they arrest me, the loan sharks will come after Jessica and the children. They'll hurt them. Jessica let out a scream. What? Michael, you didn't say that. They said if I don't pay, they'll charge my family. Michael was panicking. Mom, I know I messed up, but it's not just about me now. Dorothy approached. Eleanor, perhaps you two should talk in private. No. I removed Michael's hand from my leg. He created this situation in front of everyone. Now he's going to solve it in front of everyone. I looked at my son, still kneeling on the floor of his own living room. 50 years old, 4 children, and there he was, a man broken by his own choices. Michael, get up, please. He stood up slowly, wiping his face. Now answer me one thing. How many years have you been lying to me? Mother. How many years, Michael? He lowered his head. About 5. Ever since I left the clinic, I've never really stopped playing. Jessica went white. 5 years. Michael, you lied to me for 5 years. Jessica, let me explain. No. Jessica stood up. There's no explanation. You destroyed our family. Frank shook his head. Eleanor, what a terrible situation. What are you going to do? I looked around the room. The whole family was waiting for my decision, as if I were a judge determining everyone's fate. I'll think about it, was all I could say. I need time to think. Mom, how long? Michael asked desperately. As long as I need. I grabbed my purse. Jessica, take the kids home. Dorothy, you too. This party is over. I returned home that early morning of January 1st with the weight of the world on my shoulders. How could I decide the fate of my own son? I sat in Robert's armchair, looking at the family photos on the wall. In all of them, Michael was smiling. The 5-year-old dressed as a pirate on Halloween. The 16-year-old at prom. The young father holding newborn Tommy. When did that smiling boy become a criminal? The phone rang at 7 a.m. It was Jessica. Eleanor, can we talk? Just the two of us. Of course, my daughter. Come here. Jessica arrived an hour later, her eyes red and her expression as if she hadn't slept. Eleanor, I didn't know anything. I swear I didn't know. We sat in the kitchen. If I'd known he'd robbed you. I know, Jessica. You were fooled too. But now, The kids were up all night asking why everyone was crying at the party. Jessica took a deep breath. Eleanor, help me. What do I tell them? The truth, adapted to their age. But the truth. Jessica started crying again. What if you arrest him? How am I going to support 4 children alone? Therein lay the dilemma that kept me awake at night. If Michael were arrested, who would suffer more, him or his innocent family? Jessica, do you work? I work part-time at an accounting firm. I don't make much money. She wiped her nose. Eleanor, I am scared. Scared of being alone, scared of loan sharks, scared of everything. What about Michael? Did he say anything else about these loan sharks? He said they gave him until January 15th. If he doesn't pay the $400,000 by then... Jessica shivered. Eleanor, can they really hurt the children? I looked at my daughter-in-law, this woman who had always been a good wife and mother, now destroyed by her husband's lies. Jessica, do you want to break up with him? She was silent for a few minutes. I don't know. I love Michael, but how can I trust him again? How can I look at him when I know he's been lying to me for years? What about the children? Do they deserve to grow up with a criminal father? They don't deserve it, but they also don't deserve to grow up without a father. Jessica looked at me desperately. Eleanor, tell me what to do. Please. How could I give advice if I didn't know what to do myself? At 2 p.m., Dorothy came to visit me. Sister, I came to see how you are. What a horrible situation. He served coffee, and we sat on the porch. Dorothy, if this were your son, what would you do? I don't know. It's an impossible choice, she sighed. But Eleanor, think about it this way. How many other people can he fool if he stays at large? What if he gets arrested and the loan sharks go after Jessica and the kids? Then you help them, financially, emotionally. You've always been the matriarch of the family. Matriarch, a heavy word. It meant that the difficult decisions always fell into my lap. Dorothy, do you think I was too much of a mother? That I was too protective of him? I think you loved too much, and sometimes loving too much can be bad for your child. She took my hand. Sister, maybe it's time he learned to do it on his own. At 6 p.m., Tommy showed up at my door. Alone again. Grandma, can I come in? I'm a little sad. Of course I could. I made hot chocolate, and we sat on the couch. Tommy, what's making you sad? Mommy and Daddy are fighting. Mommy has been crying all day. He picked at the chocolate. Grandma, is it true that Daddy did something really bad? How do you explain to an 8-year-old child that his father is a criminal? Your father made some serious mistakes. Yes. And that's why everyone was mad yesterday. That's why? Tommy looked thoughtful. Grandma, are you going to put Dad in jail? My heart stopped. Why do you ask that? Because I heard Mom talking on the phone. She said you can have him arrested. Tommy looked at me with those innocent blue eyes. If you do, can I still visit you? Tears streamed down my face. Of course you can, my love. Always. And if Daddy goes to jail, will you still love me? Tommy, listen carefully. I took his little face in my hands. No matter what happens to your dad, Grandma will always, always love you. And Emma, and Lucas, and Sophie. You're my grandchildren, and that will never change. He hugged me tightly. Grandma, you do what you think is best. I trust you. After Tommy left, I was left alone with my thoughts. His words echoed in my head. You do what you think is best. I took a pen and paper and started writing down the pros and cons. There was no right answer. Any choice would hurt innocent people. At 10 p.m., Michael knocked on my door. He was alone, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Mom, can I come in? I need to talk to you. I let him in, but we stayed in the living room. I didn't offer coffee or casual conversation. It was time for serious decisions. Michael, before you say anything, I want you to answer one honest question. You can ask, if I drop the complaint and help you pay off the loan sharks, will you really stop gambling this time? He was silent for a few seconds. Mom, The truth, Michael. I want to stop, I swear I do. But, he lowered his head. I don't know if I can. It's stronger than me. At least this time he was honest. Michael, are you willing to check into a clinic? Serious, long-term treatment? If necessary, yes. And do you accept that I control all your finances? Bank account? Cards? Everything? Accepted. And if you lie again? If you steal again? If you gamble again? Do you accept that I will never help you again? Michael looked me in the eye. I do. I spent the whole night thinking about it. By 6 a.m., I had already made my decision. It was risky. Maybe it was the wrong decision, but it was the only one I could live with. I picked up the phone and called Dr. Henrique. Doctor, this is Eleanor Mitchell. I want to drop the charges against my son. Ms. Eleanor, are you sure? After everything he's done? I'm sure, but under very specific conditions. It was time to be a real matriarch. It was time to save my family any way I could. 3 days after withdrawing the complaint, I sat down with Michael and Dr. Henrique in the office to establish the rules of our new relationship. Michael, this isn't forgiveness. My voice was firm. This is a last chance. The very last one. I placed the document on the table. Dr. Henrique and I had spent 2 days drafting a rigorous contract. First, you will be admitted to the Pine Valley Clinic for 6 months, intensive treatment for gambling addiction. Michael nodded. I accept. Second, all your bank accounts, credit cards, and financial access are under my control. You receive a weekly allowance of $200, that's all. Mom, but how are you going to what? Play? I glared at him. Michael, you have no right to question it anymore. Accept it or leave. He bowed his head. I accept. Third, you will work for a company of my choosing, with your salary deposited directly into an account I control. No self-employment, no business opportunities, Dr. Henrique added. And fourth, any relapse, any lie, any attempt to access money without your mother's authorization, and she will immediately resume the complaint. I understand. Michael signed the document with trembling hands. What about the loan sharks? Money, I asked. I've already talked to them. They agreed to take $200,000 now, and the rest in 2 installments. Michael looked at me sheepishly. Mom, thank you so much. I didn't deserve this chance. No, he didn't deserve it. But his children deserve to have a father who is trying to recover. A week later, Michael was admitted to Pine Valley Clinic, 2 hours outside of Chicago. I went to visit him on the first Sunday. How are you? I asked, seeing him in a simple room, without a television, without a cell phone, scared. He was thinner, with bags under his eyes. Mom, the therapists here don't just pat you on the head, they tell you the truth to your face. And what truth did they speak? That I'm a manipulative addict who used you as an accomplice for years. Tears in his eyes. And that if I don't truly change, I'll die alone. For the first time in decades, I felt that Michael truly understood the gravity of the situation. Son, I am rooting for you. But this time, you're alone in this fight. With Michael hospitalized, I had to rebuild the relationships he had destroyed. Dorothy came to have coffee with me the following Wednesday. Sister, are you sure you did the right thing? I'm not sure of anything, Dorothy, but it was the only thing I could do to be at peace with myself. I served the cake I'd made. Raising a child is a gamble. Sometimes you lose, sometimes you win, but you never give up. And Jessica? How is she coping? Jessica is surprisingly strong. I think finding out the truth was a relief for her too. Jessica was indeed stronger. 2 days later, she came to lunch with me and the kids. Eleanor, I want to thank you for giving Michael this chance. She was different, more mature. But I also want you to know, if he lies again, I'll tell you myself. Jessica, you don't have to be my spy. Yes, I do, for me and for the children. She took a sip of coffee. Eleanor, can I ask your advice? Of course. Do you think I should break up with him anyway? Even though he's trying to get treatment. I looked at the grandchildren playing in the backyard. Tommy teaching Sophie to ride a bike, Emma reading a book under the tree, Lucas building Lego on the floor. Jessica, it's up to you, but if you decide to stay, never again be an accomplice to his lies. And if you decide to leave, I will help you. Thank you, Eleanor, for everything. A month later, I set new rules for the whole family. I called Dorothy, Frank, the neighbors, everyone who had been scammed. Guys, I'm having dinner here on Sunday. I want to apologize in person and explain what happened. Dinner was awkward at first. Everyone was still processing having been duped for weeks. Guys, my son lied to you, but I contributed too. I raised my wine glass. I spent years covering up his problems, pretending they were just temporary difficulties. Frank shook his head. Eleanor, it's not your fault. Yes, I do, Frank. I'm guilty of being too much of a mother and not enough of a nurturer. I took a deep breath. But I promise I'll never hide Michael's problems from you again. If he relapses, you'll know. Mrs. Martins raised her glass. Eleanor, let's toast to a new beginning. And to your courage. 3 months later, my life had a new routine. Every Monday, I visited Michael at the clinic. Every Wednesday, Jessica brought the kids over for dinner. Every Saturday, Dorothy came over for coffee. Every Sunday, I went to church, something I hadn't done in years. I also started therapy. At 72, I discovered that I needed help too. Ms. Eleanor, the psychologist asked, how do you feel now? Free. The answer surprised me. For the first time in years, I'm not carrying Michael's problems on my shoulders. And scared. Also, afraid he won't recover. Afraid I made the wrong decision. I looked out the office window. But you know what I've learned. I can't control his choices, only my own. 6 months later, Michael left the clinic. He was different. Thinner, more serious, with a humility I hadn't seen in decades. Mom, can I ask you something? He can. Can I hug you? I hugged my son for the first time in months. He cried on my shoulder like he did when he was a baby. Mom, thank you for not giving up on me. But if I lie again, please give up. I don't deserve your protection if I can't protect myself. Michael, you're 50 years old. You should know how to protect yourself by now. Yeah. It's over. He pulled away, wiping his face. Mom, I got a job at a mechanic's shop. Low pay, hard work, but it's honest work. Excellent. And Jessica decided to give me another chance, but with conditions. What conditions? Couples therapy, Addicts Anonymous meetings twice a week, and she controls half the money you release to me. I smiled. Jessica was learning to be strong. Akfai. A year after Christmas alone, I made a point of organizing a Christmas dinner again. This time, everyone came. Dorothy, Frank, the neighbors, Jessica, and the children. And Michael, who arrived with a simple gift, a handwritten letter. Mom, this is for you. I wrote it in therapy. I opened the letter in front of everyone. Mom, thank you for loving me when I didn't deserve it. Thank you for punishing me when I needed it. Thank you for not giving up, but also for not stopping to save me. I promise to be the son you deserve, even if it takes the rest of my life to achieve it. With love and respect, Michael. I cried. Everyone cried. And today, 2 years later, my life is different. Michael works at the shop, goes to meetings, pays his bills. He's still paying off loan sharks under my supervision, but without relapses. Jessica decided to stay with him, but she kept her terms strict. They attend couples therapy every week. The children visit me often. Tommy, who is now 10, sometimes asks me about that night he came here crying. Grandma, I helped you find out the truth, didn't I? Yes, my love. You saved the family. Dorothy and I became closer. She always says, Sister, you were brave. A lot of people would have just pretended it never happened. And me. I learned that love isn't about protecting you from consequences. It's about being there for you during them. I changed my will. Now the money is in trust for my grandchildren, and Michael only inherits a small portion. It's a precautionary measure. I also changed my bank passwords, hired a new lawyer, and put locks on all my accounts. I learned to be cautious without being paranoid, but the biggest change was internal. I no longer feel responsible for saving everyone. I'm a mother, a grandmother, a sister, but I'm also Eleanor Mitchell, a 74-year-old woman who deserves to live in peace. And finally, after so long, I'm living.